Okay.
All right, folks, we are a little bit late. We are starting at 7:02 by that clock and 7:05 by the rest of the world's clock. So it depends on how you want to do it. Marty, would you call attendance, please?
Certainly. Valerie Anderson.
Yes.
Oh, good heavens, you really should.
Yeah. Integration.
Absolutely.
Tony? I know you're here. Alan is here.
Yes.
Randy?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
Yep. Laird?
Yes.
Matt, Michelle?
Here.
Emily?
Here.
Jim? No Jim. Kelly? Not yet. Is she coming? Does anybody know?
I don't think so.
And Mike?
Present.
Yeah, all right. So we got two people missing.
Yeah, Jim was planning not to be here today. He's out of town. And as hopefully the board members and for the benefit of the public, we have a few items on what we call a consent agenda, which means they are automatically passed unless anybody needs to pull it off an agenda. If anyone has any problem with approval of minutes or from our last 2 meetings. Yes.
Yes, I just would like on the minutes. There is, of course, a summation of Dr. Stuhlman's presentation, but you know, things are pretty cut and dried on the other side, and basically it would be nice just to have a very brief synopsis. 2 sentences would be nice, saying why a motion was made, or to sum up the conversation. For instance, voting no on the pre-K was because we needed more information. That's all I'm saying, that there's really no, you know,
Explanation as to why.
explanation. Well, we don't need to explain our vote, but you know, there's nothing coming from our end in terms of our conversation. It's just presentation.
Right.
Just going forward, I'd like to see that.
Instead of discussion followed, more specifics.
Highlights, you know, just a couple of
Okay.
sentences would be lovely.
Okay, hearing nothing else, we're going to assume we're all in consent, and opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Anybody? We have public, but a quiet public today. Uh-oh. Sir, state your name and where you're from.
I'm Al Trowbridge, and I'm from Washington. Good evening. I'm asking the board to reconsider the plan to expand and relocate the REACH Pre-K program. At a time when declining enrollment is causing our per-pupil cost to skyrocket, it seems to me that you need to look in every nook and cranny of the budget for areas where you can make cuts rather than adding or expanding programs. I went online recently and was shocked to discover that the per-pupil cost for each of our elementary schools exceeds what it would cost to send a day student to either Rumsey Hall or Washington Montessori, in some cases by more than $10,000 per student. Last month, I attended a brown bag lunch with Dr. Pat at Gunn Library in Washington. At this meeting, Dr. Pat stated that the only change that she was going to put forth in the REACH Pre-K area for the next school year was to expand the existing program to 5 days a week rather than the present 4 days. She also stated that it was her opinion that the proposal to expand the program had more to do with protecting union jobs than it did with improving educational opportunities. During this discussion, I asked that if this new program was put in place in future years, would the parents have the option of sending their children for only 2 or 3 days a week, or perhaps picking them up after a half day? Dr. Pat was most emphatic in answering that, no, this would not be a daycare, but a preschool education program, and that if the parents were not willing to commit to a full day, 5 days a week program, they would have to look elsewhere. A month later, at the REACH Pre-K lottery meeting, the parents were giving a handout that offered them 3 different choices for next year. The first choice was to enroll in the full day 9 to 2 program. Busing would be provided in the morning with the parents picking up the children at 2 o'clock. The second choice was a 4-day program that would be Monday through Thursday and run from 9 o'clock to 11:45. Morning and midday busing would be provided to all 3 towns. The third option that the parents were given was one that was called extended week configuration. These students would be in class from 12:25 to 3:10, 5 days each week. This was suggested as a nice configuration for working parents. This option comes complete with midday and afternoon busing to all 3 towns. When a parent inquired as to whether these were options that the board was considering or already in place, she was urged to fill out the lottery form as they were in fact going to happen. I consider this to be a deliberate misinformation in that the board had not even discussed these options at that point. I would hope that the board would be absolutely irate that the staff continues to mislead the board, the parents, and the public with the false claim that there is a wait list of 12 children that can't be served. I serve on the board that oversees Judea Nursery School, although I'm speaking for myself, not the board tonight. When this claim was first made last fall, our head of school, Lori Horton, contacted Anthony Weymouth inquiring as to who these children were, not the names, of course. When Anthony replied, he said that some of those families have in fact enrolled at Judea. Some have made other arrangements. He had left messages for most of the other families asking if they were currently seeking a preschool. He left his callback number and said he would let them know about Judea. He also said that there was one family that had a child enrolled in Reach and were thinking of adding Judea. This does not sound like a wait list to me. As proof positive that there is no such thing as a wait list for Reach, I would point out that the staff recently was asked how many children are currently being served in the Reach program. The answer was that we have 9 in one group and 13 in the other. At the February 4th Board of Education meeting, the discussion about needing more space, the staff was asked how many students could be served in the present space. The answer from the staff was that 14 in each group could be served. Now, I'm not a math whiz by any means, but if you have 6 empty slots and a waiting list of 12, it does seem as though someone on your staff would have thought to pick up the phone and invite some of these parents to bring their children. I submit that there is no wait list. Under 2 of these options, I believe it is possible that some of the children will actually spend more time on the bus than they will in class. I would ask that before you act on this proposal, you insist on answers to the questions that were raised by board members at the February 4th meeting as to what per pupil cost is for the current program and what the projected cost per pupil for the next year after factoring in moving, new equipment, and adding busing costs. I would also request that we be told what portion of this program is actually mandated. Thank you for your time and your service to the communities.
Anyone else? Your name and your town?
Peter Bowman, I live in Washington. I have a general question about future enrollment. I understand that the future enrollment from Sherman students for next year is, right now there's 1 signed up to come to Chappaqua next year. And this is a reduction of over 85% from last year at this point. And I would like to know the board's opinion, or Dr. C's opinion especially, why this is, why there's a reduction in the number of students coming to Chappaqua. Dr. C had told me 2 months ago that I had asked her who is the advocate for Chappaqua and for Region 12, and who was responsible for attracting these students to the region. And she had assured me that that was her job number 1. That was her main priority, and she was going to focus on that. It seems to me that we're going backwards. If we reduce from 6 students this year to 1 next year, we're not heading in the right direction. So I'd like to hear a response from the board or Dr. C.
Well, we usually don't answer questions at this point, but I will ask
Anytime.
see if she'd like to answer now or at some other point. You want to answer now or hear a response at some other point?
The last I heard, there were 5 students. I went to Sherman, I went to the Board of Education. I also went to Sherman to the classrooms, to the 8th grade. We had the students come here. We invited them all to a shadow day. We provided them with t-shirts. I purchased raffles for anybody who came in, iTunes cards. We talked up our school. I have sent my newsletter to the Board of Education at Sherman every Friday, and they send it out to the parents. At this point, I know that Todd Dyer has gone to Sherman with students to talk up our programs. I know that this year, with all of the changes, that people have gotten some wrong ideas about Chapag. So I've tried, as well as Mrs. Gallo and her staff, to send that message that we are a fabulous school and are only going to get better. I'm hoping more Sherman students come. I don't know what else to say.
Is there any other action that you plan on taking this spring?
Well, at this point, the other thing we did is we offered the students in the 8th and 7th grade free passes. We're offering them to come to our musical or our drama, any of our sporting events. We're trying to invite them to Chapag whenever they'd like to come. It's hard to do anything at this point. A lot of students have already decided where they're going next year. We are also, I'm looking with Bob Geeson if we can provide a bus so we can get the students closer to Sherman at the end of the day. I know that's a problem for parents who live in Sherman. As far as I know, I think I've done a lot more than any of the past superintendents did, and I will continue to do so.
I've heard anecdotally that one of the reasons it's been reduced.
Hey, we can't have a discussion over this anymore. This is public comment. We have an agenda. As you know, we don't engage. I just let you do it this time because she could give you a response to your question.
Okay, well, I appreciate
But we can't have this go on because we have other things to take care of. Does anybody else have any comments, please, for the board? But thank you, Peter, and you and Pat can have a dialogue on this later. I am just sitting in for Jim, so I have no report. We now have the summer enrichment proposal from Teresa and Sheila.
Yes, Ms. Gambino and Mrs. DeBrito have talked to me about offering summer classes in technology for middle school students, including Sherman students, and possibly even high school students. At this point, it is just a proposal. You know, I'm bringing it to your attention, hoping that you'll support it, and we can come back at the next meeting to vote on it. It would be a fee where parents would pay for some of the classes, but I can tell you that it is directly related to Goal 2 of our strategic plan, and that Ms. Gambino is very, very strong in this area and would offer instruction that would be very beneficial to the students. Go ahead.
Thank you for that introduction. You have a packet in front of you. The one on the screen is about the same. It's just there's a lot of dark, so we've decided to print it not in the same format because a lot of ink was going to end up on your packet. The reason we came up with this idea, there has been a lot of research about the regression that happens during the summer. Typically, the average based on the RAND Corporation is about a month behind. Now, that's not to say every single student, because we know that a lot of students have enrichment that their families offer them. But overall, we would like to close that gap and keep them highly engaged and motivated in school offerings and continue it in the summer. Just so that you are aware, not every summer enrichment program does meet that criteria for closing the gap. We would like to offer very high quality, engaging programs. And it does go beyond just technology. I'm going to get into it. Started with that, with a conversation between Sheila and I, and it's kind of taken off. So I'll explain it as we proceed. Traditionally, summer school, as you know, was used as a way to fill skills that maybe students lacked in or remedial in nature. That is not what we are proposing here at all. Similar to like a camp. You've heard of camps, except this is much more academic oriented. It is about innovation and creativity. The offerings here align with STEAM. I think everyone is pretty familiar with STEM. Last year when I came before you to ask for your support in a new program, the Gateway to Technology program at the middle school, which is the program that Ms. Gambino teaches. The focus is science, technology, engineering, and math. Really, what's been void of that we have been hearing about, even Bill Dumanel and I had a conversation about this last year, is the art aspect. So there is now a movement to really refer to STEM as STEAM and include the arts.
That's the A?
That's the A. That is correct.
Okay, so we have been talking for a little while about the summer enrichment program, and a little bit of background about myself. I have extensive experience teaching summer enrichment programs. I've taught a summer enrichment program in some form or another for about the past 6 years. And I also started a company called Wired Roots Learning Labs last summer, in which I had several students from the area, mostly from Woodbury, who were enrolled in the program. And because of the nature of the technology classes offered, every single one of the students that I've had wished they could come to our school, or to the school where I taught. Not to brag or anything, but it was a very successful program for 6 years where I taught at my previous school system, and also the summer enrichment program that I started on my own, just rented a building and computers and advertised and got students. So some of the programs that we thought we could potentially offer, and we pulled our very creative and talented teachers, and we came up with some really good ideas. So the first one is the Camp for Business Entrepreneurs, where students would come in and they would develop a business. They would work on a creative business to create a business idea, learn about entrepreneurship, and also create a marketing strategy, marketing materials, and receive training in public speaking. The Math Enrichment program. Students would come in and solve fun and challenging problems through activities and games, and they would expand creative minds with an emphasis on out-of-the-box thinking strategies. Here's one of my favorite ones, What Lurks in the Water of Chappaqua Pond. So students would come in and do science experiments about the pond that we have on our campus, and they would be able to analyze the water and conduct tests to gather specimens and see what is actually in the water. Our science teachers have volunteered to potentially offer an engineering camp where the students would come in and design bridges, and then at the end they would test the bridges to see which are structurally the strongest and be able to just throw things at them at the end to see which bridges would withstand natural disasters. This one is another favorite, and I think it would be very popular amongst the Chappaqua sports students, we have so many. So the ESPNization of science and math. So the students would come in, they would bring calculators and sneakers, and they would analyze things like bat pitches, swings, and things like that, and they would be able to use technology to make them a better athlete. Medical camp could be an introduction into the medical field, which is another STEM initiative. And they would talk about the human body and different systems, and first aid skills in the afternoon, where students would be able to investigate different careers based on different interests. Improv camp, we have a lot of students who are great actors and singers and dancers, and they would be able to come in and learn how to give a mini performance, but it would be like improvisation, so it would be like more, you know, not with a script, but they'd be just thinking on their feet. Anime and manga, and I'm saying it right, manga, the students yell at me when I say it differently, manga storytelling. And that would be to explore themes, imagery, and different things in relation to this Japanese art form. Drawing. students would come in and they would just learn the foundations and elements of art, and it would be explored using pop culture. Some of the classes that I have been offering are digital nature photography, where students could come in and go on nature walks, use digital cameras, and create several images with photo editing software, and learn about composition, lighting, and camera function. Also a Photoshop camp, where students could put themselves in different places like Mount Rushmore, but it's really fun and creative, and they could really see the impact that photography has on social media and different media, and not to believe like everything that you see. Summer robotics camp, which is another one of my favorite areas. So students would come in and learn on the NXT kits with the Lego boards, and also be able to use the VEX robotics kits, which are a little bit more complex, and learn about C programming. Make your own music video, another favorite. We're actually working on 2 right now for the CMTs. Students come in and they create their own songs, and they sing in their video, they act in their video. They actually do everything from pre to post-production, and learn the art of digital filmmaking. Fashion design, which is a really great, a great combination of art and STEM, because the students actually use a 3D modeling program that is used in the engineering world, and we thought this would be a really good program to increase female interests in STEAM careers. Video game programming, and this would be offered at maybe 2 different grade levels potentially, and with the interest of gaining students, of really wanting to increase our enrollment, maybe getting some Sherman kids, some Southbury kids, some Woodbury kids, who really get excited about the programs we offer and say, you know, Mom, I really would love to move to Bridgewater and go to that school. How great would that be? And app programming, which would be offered in grades 8 through 10, potentially, and the students will come in and create a simple app with a template-based program, and then maybe even create more complex app with code. So possible platforms would be the OS X and Android. And then we have some music classes, Intro to Music Composition, where students could compose original compositions for a chamber ensemble, and culminate with a virtual concert of compositions by students performing each other's work. So they create the composition and then they perform somebody else's work. The avant-garde. Students would explore different types of music that they don't get in a normal classroom. So they could explore contemporary experimental music performance within a chamber ensemble, and could include things like free improv, electronic and electroacoustic music, sound painting, and sound art. And the course could culminate with a virtual concert also. Then we had the idea for a possible tech drop-in Saturday, where students would have more of a free choice. Like, we have so many technological resources here, so students could come in and really choose, like if they wanted to do something like web design or animation or video game programming or app design, but just wanted to come in and work on one day and not participate in a whole session. So those are some of the programs that we thought we could potentially offer with the talent that we have here on our staff members. And we also thought they would really be high interest and engaging, motivational for students to possibly want to come to our school.
So like I said, when we first started talking, we were really thinking, at a smaller scale, but then I put this out to all the 612 teachers and really got a high response from them, and that's why the presentation now has expanded to really be STEAM oriented. Just want to also let you know that during the school year there are enrichment opportunities that the students at the middle school currently do participate in, and you've got a list there of what they currently do as well. So logistics, the program would be open to students in grades 4 through 12. And as you can tell by the descriptions, it actually indicates what grade levels would be appropriate for each of the offerings. And it would be during summer break. We don't have the specifics as to which particular weeks or month, but we would be working on that. We also thought, and myself having young kids, thought that it would be a good idea to offer before and after care for the time that we offer these enrichment opportunities, just to help families. If the issue is getting them there in time so that the parent can go to work, then we're willing to offer that as well. We are hoping that we can run all of these programs. The enrollment, of course, is on our mind. So we thought about expanding it to neighboring towns, to advertising at the private schools and really getting the word out. One other piece of information, because I did communicate with Mr. O'Leary, because he's got the task of having his staff clean all of the buildings during the summer. So that communication with him and planning is critical so that he and his staff can still do what they need to do to get the school ready in the fall. So our summary is that we really want to keep students active, enthusiastic about learning, having their minds on, and the fact that all the sessions would incorporate some aspect of STEAM, we're hoping that that would increase their motivation and interest in wanting to come in the summer. And again, it's about enhancing the experiences for youth. It's about offering rigor and high quality education during the summer breaks as well to decrease the chances of that regression that takes place when they're not in school those couple of months. Questions?
So Marty first.
Well, I'm just wondering, this is quite a packet. You couldn't possibly offer all of it, could you?
Right, but I didn't want to turn anybody away without at least going through an enrollment process to see what are the interests of the students.
Would you have
Obviously,
a
it's gonna be-
minimum for running a
Yes,
class?
the program has to run it, has to fund itself.
Yeah,
So
you
families would
a
have to,
certain
right,
number.
we absolutely are looking at that and looking at the numbers based on the enrollment. We're starting this rather early.
Mhm.
Other districts don't start until maybe April, but we would want to get the word out, make you aware of it, answer any questions if there's, any discomfort or concern before we move forward.
Would it all be in one building?
Yes, we'll all
Here?
be here.
Here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Valerie?
So where's your budget?
Well, it depends on the number of students that enroll.
Well, you have expenses, so if you were going to offer, say, half of these courses, you have to have dedicated staff,
Right.
and you have overhead, and so you need to break even, not only the cost to the parents, but the expense to the district. And I'm reluctant to, start having people sign up until we know what we're getting into. Frankly, this seems very aggressive. I'm not denying that it's a good thing, but I think you're offering more classes than Naugatuck Valley Community College.
Well, because it was interest.
Yeah, and the classes, again, we just polled the teachers to see what our resources would be, to see what our potential of offering classes could be.
See,
What the possibilities would
right.
be.
And some of these are half-day sessions, so there could be one particular course in the morning and a different one in the afternoon. And so when we calculate, we're looking at close to a couple $100 to run in the morning or in the afternoon, a half day all week long. So it'd be about $300 to run it all day long for a whole week per child. And so absolutely, that's what we have to look at, is depending on the enrollment.
Bring us the numbers first, because I am concerned. You're talking about expensive staff.
But it wouldn't come out of the school budget at all, the
It's
Board of
gotta-
Ed.
It's got to be totally standalone.
Completely.
Standalone.
That was our
Completely,
intention.
yes, fund itself.
Larry?
Talking about standalone, I have some experience with school facilities being used during the summer. It is more expensive than just the electricity for your area, because you have to keep all that. And as Valerie Anderson said, I think we need to know more about expenses and how Don is going to be able to get these buildings in shape if they're being used in the summer. Very frequently, these buildings need that period of rest or a certain amount
Right.
of that to come back.
He's definitely in the loop. I reached out to him before
We
you.
just need to hear
Sure.
how that would work. Thanks.
Yeah, I personally think it's a great idea. I'm very excited to hear about this. I think it would have some good help for the students, as well as being a good way for this district to get known in the area. Particularly, I would even expand your list of towns out beyond those.
Sure.
And I think that could be a very good strategic plan, especially if you use our teachers. The only question I have is whether you have looked into the issue of the union contract
Yes.
and what impacts that it would have on that, and would you be able to get the people you want to get under our current contract?
There was that conversation, we actually even talked to the union president. So they told us exactly how much it would have to be hourly.
Per hour for
Yeah.
teachers.
Yeah.
to
And
work
you'd be
in
able
this.
to get the teachers you wanted
Well,
to
we
get?
would price the courses accordingly. So if we ran, like, say I ran a course that was in the mornings for 3 hours, we would charge the parent the 4 hours, because we would need an hour before care in the morning and an hour after care in the afternoon. To, really that helps to increase the interest, because a lot of parents just want to drop their kids off at a really good enriching program and pick them up when they get out of work. So we thought that would be a good selling point. But we would price it accordingly so that it would cover the teacher's salary, and we could talk to Don and see what we would need to cover building expenses and see.
Well, yeah, I just want to say kudos. I think it's a great idea, and thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
Michelle?
I think it's a great idea, and I have a couple of thoughts. One is that you might want to talk to or put together a little committee, meet once or twice with a couple of parents in the area about what works or the slots that are available. I think you probably should get going on it really quickly. I just sent off my first camp deposit today, so I'm already booking the summer. We've participated in Super Science down in New Milford High School for the last year, like the 4 summers before that, where they have a list that looks kind of like this. It's huge, and they only run, I think, 2 weeks. So you might either want to avoid those 2 weeks, if for the
Sure.
kids that want to do science all summer, or try to slot it into, maybe 2 of July and 2 of August. My only fear is that, there aren't that many kids out there.
Right.
And you don't want to have 2 kids sign up for each one of these and not have enough to run anything. Like, it would be much better, I think, to start the first year and maybe put the list all on one piece of paper and hand it around to the middle school and say, rate your top 3 and pick the ones that are the highest interest.
The intent was to start small, but we were encouraged to expand and see, what interest was out there as far as adults, what they would want to, offer. So we
Right.
definitely, I think that's a great
And
suggestion.
it's a great
I think
list.
That's
Like, you would
certainly
like
a
to-
great suggestion.
Well, and maybe even some of those could combine into being less than a week, but the person comes in and does 2 days of, because some of them are related, so they could build a bridge and then study the water, if they wanted to cover all of that. If it's spread too thin, you might not actually have
Build a
enough to
bridge
do
over the
anything.
water, right, and make sure.
You fall in.
It's
But
very-
I think so if you maybe talk to a few
Yes.
students and some parents and kind of get the whole timing and weeks stuff sorted out, and then do it quickly and get those brochures out fast before the summers are filled. Because
We have a sample brochure already, but we wanted to do this type
Yeah,
of presentation.
yeah, but I think it's great. I hope a lot of kids participate.
Mr. Bedini will not let you build the bridge over the wetlands.
Like the swamp monster.
Yeah, I think this is great. I think this is another example of, as we talk about board micromanaging things, I think we could be very hands-off on this, because it's a matter of you're arranging things with the superintendent and with Don as far as just the logistics of the usage of the buildings in the summer. And whatever staff, because it's all, as you said, standalone, your operation. You're doing the hiring of the teachers. It has nothing to do with their school contracts. We don't even have to have a concern of, very often when facilities are used or these kind of things bleed over, a concern of, how does this reflect upon Chippewa? You're already teachers at Chippewa, so obviously it's going to reflect well on Chippewa. You're not going to be, we don't have to oversee what you're teaching because you're part of the community already. So I think this is a perfect example of something which benefits all of us, and whatever the give and take is as far as your use of the facilities, the payback is obviously benefits the school that the board is entrusted to shepherd. So therefore, when it comes down to a little extra expense for air conditioning or staff, I think that's, obviously, it's just one thing that is all good, that we don't have to be, demanding anything of you except, giving you our best wishes.
And we're hoping, like Sheila said, that, students from other towns come
Right.
and they develop
Exactly.
friendships and they're like, oh, it was so cool, and perhaps families would consider moving
And
to the
it
region.
helps with one of our greatest concerns, which is how do we get more
Yeah.
people into the region, right?
I have one more question. Would this pose a problem for the custodial staff?
Well, that's why I'm working with Don O'Leary. They can work around us. It would be very important that
Because
that
the summertime
communication-
is when
right,
they
that's-
do so much of their work.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, definitely.
When you say 4 to 12, is that incoming or outgoing 4, just out of curiosity?
It could be incoming. Yeah.
Sign me up.
All right. Which one? I know.
Thank you.
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Good job. Terrific.
It's it might be very successful. Yeah, I know. Keep our hands off. Superintendent's report.
Yes, I first want to alert you to the fact that we have 2 students running our cameras over there. You want to introduce yourselves?
I'll go first.
Go ahead, nice and loud.
Zach Marsh.
Hi, Zach.
Murray Dortmund.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
What year, what class are you in?
We're both juniors.
Both juniors?
Excellent.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. It's going to look great on your college resume and your application. Excellent.
And they're doing a great job.
They're doing a great job. Channel 17, yes.
Yeah.
So we have a lot on the plate tonight, and Teresa again, and Karen and Kim are just going to come up and just talk about the new schedule, just to give you a little update, even though we are still working on it.
We have 2 handouts for you.
Oh, one second. Correspondence.
Sorry.
I'm going to put correspondence on all the time and tell you about any correspondence, but there isn't any.
There was a letter.
Oh, wait. Oh, there was a letter. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. There is. I want to let you know that I sent a letter to Mark Lyon, the First Selectman of Washington, in support of the cell tower. I think that it's just very important for us to have that. And I know that Washington is looking into putting one at the
Are you going to be able to understand?
station, the town highway department. And so I had sent that, so I wanted to let you know. And so now we'll move on to the schedule.
The
Sorry.
schedule. Okay, you've been given 2 pieces of paper, which we're going to go over with you. But just to introduce, what we about 6 weeks now, we've been working, the administrative staff from both the high school and the middle school, in addition to the guidance staff, has been working very hard to get together and come up with a single schedule. So what you have in front of you is what has been agreed upon by both schools as the going forward schedule for next year. And just also to sort of let you know where we are in the process. Part of the reason why we needed to do this now is because we're in the process of getting Power School up and running. So at the end of this month, on March 19th and 20th, we'll actually be building and loading our schedules for next year. So we've been working very hard, and we're each going to take a piece of this to explain.
Okay, I'd like to explain the color copy, just so you understand what you're looking at, and we'll talk about the rotation. As you can tell, there are 7 days here, and the rotation follows that at the bottom in gray, it indicates which period is dropped. So for day 1, G period is dropped. Day 2, E period is dropped. Day 3, B period is dropped, and it just follows that each day. And that's where we get a little bit of longer class time because we're dropping a period. I'm going to specifically focus on the goldenrod color. Period 1 and 2, it is almost always A, B in some sort of order, with the exception when A is dropped or when B is dropped. And the reason there is a slight difference in this rotation, when we first started to do it, the periods would drop just every single day. It would be A, B, C, D, and so forth. However, we do share the band teacher with the elementary school. Mr. Malley teaches 4th graders, 5th graders at each of the elementary schools, and he also teaches the 6th graders at the middle school. Therefore, we need to have some consistency in his schedule.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We need to have some consistency because the elementary school really relies on having a schedule that is very clear and specific and reliable for the students. They have a routine. And so AB is the block of time that he will be working with the 6th grade students. So I just wanted to describe why that's in a different color and why it just rotates back and forth with A and B. And Kim's going to explain the end of the day rotation.
At the high school, what we are looking for in the schedule is opportunities to extend learning. And what we tried to do with this schedule is to create 2 or 3 times during the day when periods almost always consistently meet together. For instance, our humanities program has always been very successful because we intertwine the English and social studies topics, and they're taught by an English and social studies teacher. What would that look like in a 57-minute period? What happens is, during periods A and B, and please don't try to follow me on this because you won't get it, but trust me when I tell you it works, okay? Because schedules are very difficult to conceptualize if you're just listening to it. However, if Teresa and I are in English and social studies classes, I have Mrs. Shagru, Teresa has Mr. Peters. We have those during periods A and B. Those 2 classes meet together and in the same room. So every single day, Teresa and I, even though we are in 2 different classes, will be in the same room at the same time. That will create 2 57-minute periods in which there will be dedicated English time, dedicated social studies time, and the curriculum will be presented in a way that makes sense historically and through literature. We'll be looking for more opportunities to do that as time goes on, and that is why if you look at A and B, it gives an opportunity with our younger children that they'll be starting out with the same period consistently each day, so their homeroom won't be with 7 different teachers, it will be with 2 different teachers. And at the end of the day, so that's the first time when we can start linking these periods. Towards the middle of the day, you see C and D has a somewhat consistent schedule as well, and F and G, most importantly, also has a consistent meeting time. Even if those periods aren't linked, if you're involved in virtual high school, if you're involved in an internship, which we'd like to see more of for our students, these are times when you have flexible time at the high school that you know that this is where you're going to be at the end of the day, and this is how you sign up for those classes so that you have the flexibility to do what you need to do with internships and with virtual high school. So what we've tried to do in this rotation that doesn't look at all like a rotation, it's not random at all. If you look at those colors, it'll make it easier for you to see that what we've actually created is time for extended learning. And that's the most important thing about the schedule.
There's one other piece about the schedule. As we go through, you'll see that there's days 1 through day 7. We are actually going to have fixed days on the school calendar. So we will know at the beginning of the year what every day of the year is going to be, whether it's a day 6, a day 7. And that's so that students can plan. It's also great for when our kids are doing internships, they know what days they have that period at the end of the day. In the event of a snow day, that day just drops out and it gets added to the end of the year. So if on March 7th it's a day 6 and we have a snow day, that day drops out and it comes to the end of the year, you'll end with a day 6. So we won't lose the meeting time, but we don't shift all of the other days afterwards, which can be a nightmare for planning, especially if you do your plan book.
And speaking of nightmares, let's go with February 6th rather than March 6th.
Thank you. I hear you.
Right. Teresa and I have also agreed to a stationary place in each classroom by the light switch where there'll be a folder for each teacher. That will be, one use of that will be for the safety plan for that classroom, but the second use for that will be what we're working on, which is a flip chart that every teacher will have in every classroom that says, today is day 1, this is what today looks like, this is what tomorrow looks like. You flip it over and it says, this is today, this is tomorrow. Most of that will be for me because I will have no idea what period it is ever, but you know, I don't now with a 4-period day. But second of all, we'll do that for the students because we think that's a swell thing as well.
It'll be very helpful. It'll just have all the periods all in the right order, and we'll just be flipping it each day.
Mm-hmm.
The second sheet that you have is actually the bell schedule. So you can sort of see what we have for a regular 6-period day. The second one is the advisory days. We intend to have advisory on Tuesdays and Thursdays, beginning in October. So it won't happen at the beginning of the year. And then we have a 2-hour delayed opening and an early dismissal day so that we can sort of see what all the bell times will be.
Can I ask, this may be a stupid question, but in modeling good behavior, there are no stupid questions.
That's right.
How did you settle on a 7-day rotation as opposed to a 6 or an 8 or a 5 or a 10? How did the logistics of that work out?
Well, it was to have the 5 academic and then 2 unified arts specials experiences, and so that would come out to the 7 class periods, and dropping 1 allows for increased instructional time. So
that was the goal, and it just simply fit
to
in that way.
increase
And you
instructional
worked from
time,
there.
you know, for the middle level, and to not decrease it so much at the high school level.
There was also an issue with teachers' contracts. We
Right.
can't go beyond 7
Right.
periods. We couldn't do an 8-period rotation because of the number of...
They can only teach 5.
They can only teach 5.
Right.
Just a couple, hopefully brief questions for you. The humanities program, are the teen history and English teachers, will they have common prep periods?
Yes,
Okay, and that's been the case all along, and you'll just continue
that
that?
has not been the case all
Oh,
along.
that has not been. Oh, so
Yeah,
this
but
is
the goal
actually-
is for that to be created now.
This would be an improvement. then.
We're
That's
actually,
great.
we're
That's right.
actually working in this program. We're trying our very best to get all of the PLC's planning time at the high school.
Right.
So as we work through this month is really when this is taking place in terms of the nuts and bolts of the schedule, making it fit this. We're doing our very best to make sure as many PLCs can have common planning time, which they don't have now.
That's fabulous.
Right.
The early dismissal schedule that you have for us on here, is that for both weather-related as well as half-day schedules?
Yes,
We've changed that.
right, we've changed that already.
The last we did that with you at the last meeting.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to
Yes.
confirm that.
It was very confusing to parents to have 3 different early dismissal times. Is this an early dismissal time? Is this a PD time? Is this and so we just combined the time and divided it. And so they're all the same now for the 2 different school systems.
That's great. Would there ever be a time when you would need to put in an X day? In other words, if you're planning from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and you never want to, if you have a snow day, then you just lost the day.
We have
But-
one day that's not on this bell schedule, that's a 7-period day, and it's only going to happen twice during the school year.
Okay.
It will happen on the first day of school, where the students will arrive and go into their advisories, and they will see all of their class periods the first day of school, just so that they know who their teachers are, introduce kind of that process. And then the starting of the 2nd semester will run that day as well. So we do have some sort of quirky schedules. Exam day schedules could be a little bit more quirky. But these are the ones that they'll be using on a
Standard.
regular basis, and those we can just publicize as when we come upon them.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you going to have like a big neon sign when you enter the school building saying what day it is? Because it's no longer going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
We'll have that, and I think I'll just go with my standard, Lil.
That's a good idea to have a security. As you walk in, a great big sign.
The other piece, I just want to mention it again, advisory is a high school term. It really means D1 at the middle school, okay? And I know that some of the parents in middle school may have been concerned that we were getting rid of D1. We are not doing that. What we are doing is we are rethinking how we provide intervention. So there will be 2 times a week where you can go to a teacher that you need to go to get extra help or support or whatever. But then there'll also be intervention periods, and we're hoping that the change in the schedule will be able to have some teachers, 1 period each, a math and a language arts teacher that will be available in a lab type setting, where if you need assistance in math or English or with a paper, etc., that you can go during that period. And that's something that we're working through, because certainly we don't want you to leave math to go and work on an English paper. But certainly if you have an elective or during lunch or etc., we'll work that through. So I don't want people to think that we got rid of D1 and that opportunity is not there anymore. It's going to be there. It's just going to be more developed. and less per chance. Because although D1 is very helpful to some kids, not everyone uses D1 in the best possible way that they can.
Is that an extra help period?
Yes.
Do you want?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the other thing to also keep in mind is that this is still a work in progress. What we're sharing with you tonight is the framework or the structure, which took us some time to get to. And now we're actually sitting down and we're going through the different classes and how we'll link classes, how we'll do things like PLC. So it is still very much a work in progress, and you'll see a more finalized version after the March 19th, 20th scheduling.
I want to echo Alan's comment earlier that I think it's marvelous you bring things to us to help educate us on what you're thinking about and what you're planning. It helps us learn more, but we have to be very careful not to become micromanagers in this. And so I think our comments might be helpful, but remember that it's just that, to offer advice, perhaps.
Thank you.
So do I have this correct, that on the days you have advisory on Tuesdays and Thursdays, generally on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I note that you indicated that it's on most Tuesdays and Thursdays.
It doesn't begin until October.
Right. So, well, you hedged it even more than that. You said
Well,
those
there's-
Tuesdays and Thursdays between October and June.
Yes, because what happens is if there's a holiday,
Right.
like the week of Thanksgiving, we
Right.
don't hold advisory
On
during.
Tuesday.
Right, so, but you'll know, the whole school schedule for the year has been laid out.
Right.
So you'll know well in advance which days are advisory days. But we felt that if there was a day that they weren't in school, Memorial Day, for example, that we weren't gonna make the advisory that Tuesday.
All right, so if you have a 7-day rotation, it's 5 non-advisory days and 2 advisory days, or is it?
No,
Very.
it doesn't wrap that way.
No, the advisories are consistently on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
They're always on Tuesdays
When
and
they,
Thursdays.
when they're held, they are on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Regardless of what.
Which means that it
So
will
there
hit
are
different
actually
days.
3 during a typical 7-day period, but sometimes 2?
No, there are 3 during,
Or there
there
are
are
always
2
3.
during a 5-day period.
Right, you can only really look at it through the 5-day because of the way the rotation wraps through. So it won't always fall on the same days. It could be on
No, but you're always gonna, well, you're gonna end up with 3 one week and then 2 the next. That's the way I-
No, it's
You'll
always
never have
Tuesday,
Thursday.
Thursday.
So it's a little easier to look
I
at the
understand,
bell
it depends
schedule.
on what day it depends on what day your day one is. If your day 1 is a Monday, you're gonna, day 2 is a Tuesday, day 4 is a Thursday,
Right.
and day 6 is a Tuesday, or
Well,
day
no,
7 is
no,
a Tuesday, so
okay.
you've got 3 in that.
No, but
in that
if you look at
rotation.
this here, advisory slips in, every day has 6 periods.
Yeah.
But advisory slips in on one of these days. So no matter where you are rotating through the days during the week, if it's a Tuesday or Thursday, the classes are slightly shorter
Right.
and advisory slips in.
I understand
He's
that,
got
but what I.
that.
So it has
what
nothing
I-
to do
Yes,
with
what-
what
the way you
letter.
I
explain
think
it makes
mathematically I'm
sense. Yes.
correct.
Yes.
That
You-
sometimes you're gonna have 3 in a
Right.
7-day rotation, and sometimes
No.
you're gonna have
Rotation.
fewer.
Can I
Oh,
just?
you say rotation, you say
Can I
rotation.
just
Yes.
remind
Right.
you
Right,
that
yes.
trying to understand this in a conversation is probably a really foolish notion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm impressed
No,
that
I-
you got that, but don't try,
I
really.
understand, but the next question, I guess, is it appears that on advisory days, what you've done is you've gotten advisory by taking a little bit from
Yes.
each class. You've cut those
Yeah.
down to 50-minute classes generally,
That's right.
and that's how you get there, okay.
That's
And I
exactly
can
right.
tell you, Greg,
You
that
can figure it.
as we've gone through.
Yes, I know, I said I
You're
was
selling yourself
impressed.
short, your explanation was great.
As we've gone through this, because I've done the whole year in Power School, there's a lot of times that it doesn't hit 3 times in a rotation because of Mondays off or early dismissal. We don't do it in an early dismissal week. So if you factor in all of those times where it drops out, I would probably guess that there's not a huge number of 7-day rotations where 3 days are taken up for the advisory.
Right, but your
we can give you an
idea,
exact number.
your idea is you want advisory to happen on a regularized
Yes,
basis
right.
throughout the week, and that's why you've pegged it not to the 7-day rotation, but
That's
to the
right.
week.
That's exactly
Got it.
right.
Got
See?
it.
It's
There you
evident.
go.
It's evident.
Nicely done.
Exactly correct.
Valerie?
You mentioned that you have a shared humanities, the ABBA grouping, and that you're still in the same class, but the emphasis in that, block, is going to be English and then social studies or history. What about lab science and art? Are you still going to try to create blocks for that?
Because of the 57-minute periods, our science teachers want to pilot creating the curriculum within that 57 minutes for the first year and see how that works out. They believe that most labs can be developed within that 57-minute periods, because in a small school, the disruption to the schedule would be huge if you started to create double lab periods. It would make it very difficult for students to get what they want, because keep in mind, with 300 students, you don't come up with 30 kids to take everything at the same time. You know, when I was running an 1,800 high school schedule, I had 1 or 2 in each period. Very, very different than when 75% of your courses are singletons. So we're going to try and see how the science works. We have not cut down on the instructional time for science in anything but a couple of AP courses. The rest of the science courses actually have more time, and we're going to see how that works out before we add double labs.
I think in addition to that, what we have done is we've planned meetings with all of the departments over the next few weeks, and we're discussing the actual specific impact on the schedule to their courses. Because as we go into scheduling, we need to have parameters of what courses we're going to be putting into the system, for example. So we're getting teacher input on all of this as we go. The science teachers were one of the ones we spoke to first, because that lab piece was important. So when I mentioned at the beginning that this was a collaborative schedule, it is very collaborative in terms of the amount of people who have had input on it.
So the entire building is going to be moving at these times. Whereas, of course, before, middle corridor had its own schedule, and of course we had block out here. So do you foresee the middle school children then, obviously, I guess I need a bigger picture, not just the detail here.
Okay.
We have not been, I think, given the big picture of how this middle school, high school integration is going to be. We've only voted on the schedule to get rid of block. So you're going to have all of these kids circulating according to these bells, and will you foresee having, say, a 6th grader take a class way over there? Or a senior take a class way over there?
We'll be
They would be in the same corridor.
Yeah.
You're not going to be integrated specifically like that?
The only thing that could potentially be integrated or shared are things like the computer labs, which are located off of this wing, or off the media center, for the purposes of, we really want to make sure that those get utilized by everyone. And if we lock them into saying that can only be used by the middle school or that can only be used by the high school, it sort of, it eliminates flexibility. So the shared portions, just like this media center is shared, but in terms of core classes, they'll still happen on the wings that we have designated. I don't foresee kids intermixing classrooms, except in the case where we did talk about the idea of having some of the 7th and 8th grade middle school students taking high school foreign languages. But I don't see any, those classrooms are on this side, so they wouldn't really be crossing over into that zone, for example.
Well, and that would be done purposefully.
Right.
But we did change the schedule so we could start using more staff.
Yes.
And classroom
The
area.
staff will move.
Yes.
And so eventually there'll be more of a homogenization,
Right.
right?
But the staff can move to, for instance, we won't have a physics lab on the middle school side and on the high school side. The staff member, if our physics teacher were also teaching a 6th grade course, then the staff member would be expected to move, which frankly is what they do now, but they just do it within this corridor or within that corridor.
Okay. And then getting to that 10,000 foot level, because I don't think we've had this conversation. And you know, this is Swahili, and I'm glad you guys are doing it. I was lost in my high school most of my life anyway. But 10,000 feet. Are we still having a separate middle school, but just under the jurisdiction of one administrator?
Teresa and I have been...
Or are we now totally going to be 6-12?
Teresa and I have been very clear with the staff that regardless of what happens moving forward, we are very, very mindful of the fact that there are 2 separate philosophies for middle and high school students. And that work has to be honored as we move forward. Just because we have kids in the same building doesn't mean they're the same kids. You know, if you look at a 6th grader and a 12th grader, be pretty quick to figure that one out.
Right.
And we realize that. But it's just like when we were redoing the mission at the high school, when I first came here, and I said we have to honor the work that came before us while moving forward into the future. I feel the same way about this. We have to honor the fact that there are two schools. There are two very distinct age groups, but we do live in the same building and we live in the same world. And if you listen to Sir Ken Robinson, he will tell you that we put far too many timestamps on kids as though their date of manufacture is the most important piece of information. What this will allow us to do is to say if a 7th grader is ready to take algebra at a high level, then they'll be taking a high school class. Why create a course for 1 or 2 middle school children if we can safely integrate them with the high school children, purposefully and with thought?
And we would seek parent
Right.
permission to do
Right.
that.
That's right.
And I think we're also getting, as we're moving towards this new model, is we're also moving more towards collective work between the staff members. So looking at our curriculum, for example, 6-12, and being more cognizant of that process. So culturally, they are different, but at the same time, we are unified in one building, and we're trying to keep that part of it alive too.
Going to the 20,000-foot level. Do we have a Chippewa Middle School and do we have a Chippewa High School? Or do we have a Chippewa K-12? I mean, you talk
K-12 or 6-12?
I'm sorry.
6-12?
I'm jumping ahead to 2020 on that one. I'm not seeing, we've changed the schedule, we might use some more staff, we're gonna keep the kids separate. So basically, the middle school is still going to be an entity unto itself.
Chippewa Middle High School, that's what we're gonna call it, if the board approves that, or is
But
okay with that. But there's going to be a middle school with a middle school focus, and there's gonna be a high school with a high school focus, but it's gonna allow us to share staff, it's gonna allow us to provide more opportunities for kids, but we're still gonna report to the state as a middle school and as a high school. They each have their own numbers.
May I point out that that's a philosophical and an educational distinction? The sign out front says Chippewa Valley School. The sign that the PTSO created at my request 3 years ago when I came in says Chippewa Valley School. That only gets attention now because of what we're doing. We're not going to forget what we know about middle school kids. We're not going to forget what we know about high school kids. We're simply going to be thoughtful in the way that we can use these resources.
So the kids are over there, high school's over here. Every now and then a little crossing of purpose, hopefully not for purpose, but to use facilities. And there really isn't a really, on the surface, there is really no change.
I wouldn't say there's no change because that's not fair. But what I would say is that the changes that are coming are changes that are necessary as we get smaller. If we want to retain the Chippewa experience, which is a very unique experience and really doesn't exist in a lot of places other than these 3 communities, if we want to maintain the community feel of these buildings, and if we want to do that for 6 through 12, then we have to do this.
Right.
Because it won't work any other way.
Agreed.
It's really moving more towards the high school the secondary movement.
The second,
That, we're following the secondary school reform model, and that is, we are in essence one school here that operates 2 sort of sub-schools within it. But I can tell you in Power School, it's set up as one school, as Chippewa Valley School, because scheduling-wise, we're going to be utilizing the same bell schedule, we're going to be utilizing the same staff members.
Right.
So in that way, we will retain teaming at the middle school. We will retain a lot of the things that make the middle school, but I would say that it isn't the same school.
No.
It's a different school.
it's an evolving
It's
school.
evolving.
Yes.
It seems to me that this is an opportunity to take the program, let the program take advantage of the small size of the school.
Absolutely.
Because while this might be a difficult thing to do in a 4,000 student middle high school, it's a lot easier when you have the control that you have over having the relationships you're able to have with the students because there aren't as many of them. So this is taking a weakness, too small, and making it a strength in terms of program and leading with it.
Exactly right.
And doing something you really couldn't do otherwise. So congratulations. And this makes perfect sense. I must be insane.
I'd just like to say one thing. I can testify to the fact that I have worked with a rotating schedule, and grown-ups have a terrible time with it, but the kids have no problem.
They get it.
Yeah, they get it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
When did we get a chance to see, or take our first look at the actual courses as they plug into these time periods?
Well, that's what we're in the process of doing now.
Will we
So
be
we're
able to see
doing.
that before they are launched to the kids? One of my concerns was that with this 7-day schedule and multi-period schedule, that we might not have enough students to fill the kind of wide course offerings that we'd like to offer. That it might limit our course offerings, and that we might not have sufficient students to run some courses.
What we're doing is, as part of what we've been meeting, like I said, for about 6 weeks. And what's happening right now is the middle school and the high school are working on doing student class requests to basically find out the interest level of the number of kids that would request a particular class. We needed to have that information before we could even go into actually running a schedule. So over the course of the next 2 weeks, we're meeting with departments, and at that point we will iron out what specific classes we are going to have available and which ones we think we can get enough kids to sign up for. You won't really know whether the scheduler fits enough kids into a class until after the 19th and 20th, because what happens is we load all the course requests in, and PowerSchool through its scheduler will run the matrix to figure out, based on what students chose, what can actually fit into their schedule. And we have thresholds. We've set thresholds of 15 students per class. If there are less than 15 students in a class, that's a class we have to look at perhaps not offering. But the addition of things like virtual high school will help us, because if there's only 1 or 2 students that want to take an AP Bio course, for example, it doesn't mean they won't get it. It just means that they might have to take it through virtual high school. So if we can't offer it here, we're going to try to offer it, meet their needs through a different way.
Do you anticipate a lot of times that a student cannot get the English course they'd like because their science course or their math course is also at the same time there are limited numbers of times that course is offered?
Well, because we're such a small school, that is always going to be a problem. So we won't really know how much of a problem that is until we run the schedule the first time. And generally,
Problem at any school.
I was going to say in any school, I mean, I was in a much bigger school than this, and we had, generally what happens is the first time you run the scheduler, you maybe get 35%. And then you just keep working at it. You make switches, changes, move things around, and then you just keep working at it until you get to the point where maybe 85% of your students can be scheduled through PowerSchool. And then what we do is we manually go into the remaining students and we try to move things around to make it work for them. But you don't get to that point in the scheduling process until you've loaded everything and you start to run the scheduler. So this year, that's happening on March 19th and 20th. So after that, we will have a much better idea of what classes were requested, what classes were filled, and perhaps what classes just missed that threshold. And then we can move from there. We can make changes after that. It's sort of a manual change after that. But we're anticipating that. That's not something, when you have a small school like this, you have to know that you're going to be working on that piece of it, because there's going to be limited numbers of kids to take limited courses.
When are the students going to know whether the schedules they've already selected through guidance are going to be the schedule, or it's going to be different? I mean, when will the students know that so that they can make adjustments?
There's a lot that depends on that. Number one, will the budget pass in May? That will have an effect on schedules. We'll have preliminary numbers in the middle of March. We'll run the schedule. As Karen said, the first run, we'll be lucky if we get 40%. So that's not a realistic look at a student's schedule yet. So generally speaking, we like to have students absolutely know in June so that they're making plans for next year. We always want the kids to be looking forward. But if the budget fails in May, you know, I have rescheduled schools in July. Those things happen.
Right, I understand that, but my concern would be is that the students who are entering the 9th grade, for example, if their schedule gets disrupted, they have 4 years to fix it.
I know.
students entering the 12th grade or the
Oh,
11th grade are pretty much very limited by comparison.
We are very cognizant of that, and the guidance staff are working with us to make sure that we're going to do everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, that's
To
one
make
of the,
sure that every
that's,
student gets what they need in terms of the schedule, especially the upperclassmen who are close to graduation.
that's one of
Thank
the things that we take into consideration when we play that shell game that is scheduling.
Thank you.
That's the hardest part of running
It
the school.
is, it is.
I know.
Do you anticipate that this new schedule is going to allow us to have more course offerings or fewer and more compact course offerings?
I think more. I think it offers more because there's going to be more opportunities for electives in the schedule, especially once, for the students that are new into the schedule and are not like looking for very specific things that need to fulfill their course requirements. So as time goes on, we'll actually be able to offer more electives. And again, Kim was talking about the idea of developing things like internships and work study. Those are things that we really don't have here at the moment. So we would like to expand those offerings
But
for
those are
those
off
students.
campus, in terms of the course offerings.
Yes, but it still, it fits within their course schedule, and that's why that end of the day was set that way. So that if a student is a senior and that we want to place them in an internship, they can actually earn credit for that internship, even though it's not here on campus.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great progress, thank you.
I just want to thank Karen and Teresa and Kim and Sheila's there and Todd Dyer and Ally. They've worked very hard. I really have not been involved with this. As I said many, many times, I just was setting the framework, and then the people that run the schools will put together the schedules.
Rosemary, Counselor.
And Rosemary too, right. And
Off to the hockey game.
a lot of...
Follow me on Twitter. You might actually, you'll learn something and you get good pictures of kids.
So they're really doing a great job. So I'm really happy with the new schedule. I think it's going to be very beneficial, not only for the students, but for the staff. It's going to allow every staff member to have a PLC, which is a professional learning community, planning period with other colleagues to look at data, to analyze work, to put together plans, to work on the new Common Core standards, to work on the new assessments, and we do not have that at the high school at all. It's also going to allow us to have students receive interventions who need it on a regular basis in a systematic way. And then most importantly, it's going to allow our students to have continuous instruction in math and science and world language, which is really needed. Okay, so I'm going to move on quickly. The long-range planning goal number 3, we do have a working meeting tomorrow night. Bob Geeson is presenting on busing, so he will give an overview. There's a lot of questions that are coming up about busing and how long would kids be on the bus if they were at this school or that school, etc. So he's doing that. I put in the packet for you to see so you know what's going on. There is a, it's called the Potential Solution Research Guidance Form. And that is the form that the committees are working on as they evaluate the different options. And some of you are here who are at these meetings. And it really is very good dialogue about exactly what's going on in our schools now, what would go on if we consolidated, what would go on if we consolidated and kept Burnham open, what would go on if we just built a new pre-K3 school, going through the options. Anne this weekend finished the staffing for each configuration, so we'll have that tomorrow night for everyone. And Bob finished the 10-year analysis of the costs for a staff member, figuring in raises and insurance, etc. So we are slowly moving into a direction of more and more information. On the back page of the agenda tonight, it talks about the meetings. I set these meetings, they're not in stone, but I wanted to get something out there. Tomorrow night, as I said, we'll have the meeting with the busing and working groups. Then on March 19th, at 6 o'clock, we'll have a facilities presentation, and that'll be Don and Tony talking about some of the reports that have come back from Castle Booze and the other companies about the buildings and the work that needs to be done and all of that stuff. March 27th will be another work session if needed. April 2nd will be a presentation of the options. Hopefully we'll get a big crowd in the audience, and each group will present on that research form and the costs for over 10 years. April 3rd will continue if we need it. April 8th, we will hopefully make a presentation of the options to the Board of Ed. I cannot promise that this is going to be in stone because it really depends on Don O'Leary and getting back the information from the companies that he's working with. But at least we have a schedule. What I am expecting on April 8th, or whatever day that happens, that the option groups will present 2 of the options to the Board of Education. Okay, that they have whittled down the ones that we're working on now. Okay, if perchance you want more than 2, we are happy to do that, but we are going to present 2, and then from that point, the Board of Education, under their responsibility, will decide to send one, hopefully, to referendum. So that's long-range plan. I did give you the high school graduation issues task force report from January 2012. I wanted just to give this to you so that you can look it over. You will see that when the state put out the secondary reform plan, which you have, and I've talked to you about that as far as credits and expectations and moving to a 612 system, they, like always, were very gung-ho and put a lot of things in there, and then as they realized they didn't have the funds to fund all of these options, they've removed some of them. So it's just some of the highlights, just so you can see. They've eliminated world language requirement to graduate from high school. We still highly recommend that students who are going to a competitive college take 3 years of world language, but you do not need world language to graduate from a high school in Connecticut. They have revised the math requirements. There's still 4 credits, but they have changed one of the courses to probability and statistics as opposed to calculus. They have eliminated end-of-the-year exams. That was originally in there, that after, junior English, you had to take an exam. After, biology, you had to take an exam. Similar to the Regents in New York, they've eliminated that. And this is really something that's really something that I feel very strongly about, and it's on the page 5, mastery-based graduation system, where it talks about we need to reverse things so that time spent in schooling is the variable and student learning is the constant. So it means that you can eliminate or start to look at eliminating some of the seat time as long as the students are meeting the standards and learning, which gives you a lot more flexibility in working with students and providing more relevant, meaningful learning opportunities. So certainly we're not there yet, but this is where the state is going, okay? It talks about the new teacher and principal evaluation, which we've talked about. And then this one, establishment, a procedure whereby districts want to pilot multiple pathways for graduation. You can do that. And so this is, I just thought it was the student success plans and the senior demonstration projects referred to the capstone. We have to make sure that we move our system where we have a senior project. What the state is asking you to do, they don't call it a senior project, although they based a lot of their research on Chapag's senior project, which is something to be very, very proud of.
They should.
They now have expanded it to call a capstone, where it starts in the middle school as a student success plan, where kids start to look at different personality traits and careers and interests, and it morphs into a capstone project that shouldn't just be senior year, it should be a culmination of their 4 years in high school. So that we need to work on, but we have a good foundation. And then they talk about SSPs. And so, you know, I just wanted to give that to you so that you have the background and you understand where I'm coming from when I talk about these initiatives and moving 612. This really comes from the state, comes from the secondary school reform. It comes from, you know, all of the National Association of Secondary School Principals, from the counseling organizations, from the school board organizations. You know, this is not Pat Cosentino dreaming this stuff up. There is research behind this, and this is the movement that we're following. Okay? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. With that said,
Now we're
going to the
reach
pre-kindergarten reach enhancement. What I've asked, Ann and Ally are here. We had a meeting last week. I do want to address the gentleman who spoke about our meeting at the gun library. He's absolutely right. We met at the gun library, a small group of us. I spoke about pre-K. At that point, it was in December. It wasn't really on my radar. And I probably said something like, I have a lot on my plate, and I don't know if we really want to move forward with this. Between that time and the time it was brought to the board, Ann Stolman and Ally O'Hara really convinced me and Bob Geeson that it's just a no-brainer to do this because it's not going to cost any more money. It's going to allow us to bring in some more students, and it's going to increase instructional time for students by adding Fridays and by adding longer hours. So, said go ahead. That's where we were. Again, we were bringing it to the board and we had the cancellation because of the snow, and that's why, and the parent meeting was scheduled, so it got a little silly and people got had some concerns. So what Ann did is Ann put together this report that I think you all received about the busing costs, and you'll see, and Ann can speak to it, but there are no additional busing costs. Matter of fact, it saves a little money. And then she talks about the current and proposed staffing costs, and this is where we are. Now, at the last meeting, there was a motion made and passed that we establish a fund, but I am not going to move forward unless the board wants to support this enhancement of, we're not getting rid of REACH, we're enhancing it, and so that's where I am. We did write a motion in case, if you want to, I'll give it to the chair, that's just in case, but if not, we will stick with what we have, and we will do whatever, you know, happens after that point.
I just have some questions as far as this
Ann and Ally,
attachment here.
yeah.
I'm having a hard time doing the math, and I think it's because it doesn't, you just can't add everything up. But if you could kind of walk me through, at least maybe with the proposed.
Okay.
If everyone sees the proposed to the second page, it says total transportation costs charged to the pre-K total $80,592. What are you adding together to reach that number?
That is the 2 buses that go on the tech run. Bob charges half of that to pre-K.
The tech run is
On
the
their way
run
back?
to the other schools, Abbott Tech and
Oliver Wilcutt and.
Right.
Okay, well, the bottom row of this
Right.
sheet says total cost, right?
Right.
So the total cost is actually $30,912.
Second page.
Second sheet you're looking
bottom
at?
row.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're not subtracting the 10,000 from that? Or are we?
You could, it would depend if you needed the third bus run or not. It's a savings of 2,000 with the 3 buses, the way it's set up.
Right. Oh, I understand the
Potentially.
conclusion, but I'm just not seeing, you know, the old show your work kind of thing. I'm just not seeing the numbers adding up. I don't even see the numbers adding up to 80,000. I don't understand what has added up to reach that number. Is anybody else?
80,000 of these two numbers. 80,000 is 49,680 plus 30,912.
Well, if you
That
double-
equals 80,000.
If you double the 49 and then take away 10, the 10,304. It has to do with the tech run. So the tech run,
Where's the 49,680 on this page? Is it not on the page?
it's at the bottom just after that.
Oh no, I see it down there, but I mean that's come
Where does
from
it come
elsewhere.
from?
Where does that come from? The 49,680.
That's the tech piece of it, the tech run. I didn't include tech run costs.
That number comes from Bob, because in that bus, the busing, some of it, the money is put towards pre-K expense, and some of it's put towards tech expense.
Okay, so what we're
that
saying,
piece is
so
the
that
tech piece of it.
49,680 comes from elsewhere. And then to that, we add the numbers in the parentheses in the total cost area only, which are 10,304, 10,304, and 10,304, which brings us to 39,12. I see, okay. That makes sense now. My other question is, we were talking about, we talked about this last time, and as part of your presentation, as part of our questions about it, I think a gentleman in the community asked. We're talking about the enhanced education involved with having a 5-hour schedule as opposed to a 2-hour and 45-minute schedule. But then again, there were logistics involved with parents and other extended daycare that is what caused us to have to entertain both the shorter schedule and the extended schedule as the parents chose.
A lot of parents of 3-year-olds would not want a program that goes past noon because their kids nap.
Okay.
So we take kids at 2 years, 9 months because they will be 3 by December 31st. So we follow the school mandate on age. So to have a 2-year, 9-month student, of course, or child, they're going to nap. So the parents that want that just morning piece, we wanted to be able to offer that to them. But the majority of our 4-year-old children would be better served by a 9 to 2 program. So we wanted to offer both. Actually, when we met with the parents, we really kind of, when the gentleman talks about options, it was sort of a poll for us to know what people were interested in. We just didn't have much interest in the partial day as far as a morning only or afternoon only. So the nap seemed so important as a piece of this in decision making for parents that at this time we had, were there 9 or 10?
10 that would like to go home at the midday.
Now, I realize this is daycare, but is there any potential for napping being worked into the schedule?
No. We're not napping at school. It's not daycare.
Okay. And then my final question had to do with, as I said, we all had our own agendas, our own personal predilections and before, but mine, of course, had to do with travel time. And the way this busing works out, has it been solved that it appears that we've solved the age combination? We're not going to have 3-year-olds with 8th graders.
Right.
Have we figured out how we can manage this so a 3-year-old isn't on the bus for an hour? Because
that's why we have 3 buses for 10 children in the afternoon. We may not, depending on where they live, we might not need that 3rd bus.
All towns are represented though. In the 10 students that would like a shorter program, all towns are represented.
So there is.
We would have to give Bob addresses and Pam addresses and figure out if it's 2 or 3 bus runs, but that's why we have 3 listed.
But you're keeping it down closer to the 30 than to the 60 then, as far as the length of the runs.
Oh, yeah. Marty?
Do we ever use those mini buses for small numbers?
Yes.
We do, already. Okay.
Anybody else?
Well, I just would like to go through this because I don't understand it.
Okay.
So I need to be educated. So the first page is our present REACH program.
Right.
So it is as it is. So then the second page is the proposed, and I stared at this for a while, just like I stared at the high school schedule, and I just need to be walked through it.
Okay. Well, bus A starts in the morning and goes to Abbott Tech. It has to come back. So on its way back, it grabs pre-K students and will bring them to our program.
Okay, what are, okay, but they can, this one bus can pick up the pre-K kids from the 3 towns?
No.
Bus A.
No.
Bus A.
That's what I
Just
said.
bus A.
Bus A.
Bus A would
So
be
there'll be a
coming from the
designated
staff.
group of children that will go on bus A.
Would
in
be
the morning.
coming from that direction, from the Danbury direction, be coming up. Bus B goes to Oliver Wolcott,
Mhm.
which it's then coming back on 202 through Washington. So it's getting the northern part of the district. And it stops and picks children up along the way.
Okay, so bus A comes from the south, bus B comes from the north
Right.
technically,
And
or
this
the
is what
east.
we have now.
Okay.
too.
And what, your program starts at 9?
Mhm.
What time would the Abbott Tech and Oliver Wolcott, that's on the high school schedule, so it's like at 8?
I don't know what time those tech schools start, but that is what we do now. And the children are back at the time we would need them to be back. So the morning piece doesn't change. That's not a
Okay.
change.
And so then going down, the AM cost is $20,608.
That's what is charged off of each bus run. Bob, that's just it's a paperwork piece. Bob charges that to pre-K. If we didn't have a pre-K program, the entire amount would be charged to the tech side, which is still a district expense.
Okay, so because we're tuitioning out kids, we're gonna use the run out gratis, or it's part of our natural expense. But the picking up and the coming in, 2 buses is $20,608 times 2,
Right,
the pre-K cost.
yes.
Okay, and so then midday, bus A takes morning session PK children home midday, so as they run south towards Danbury or run northeast or east to
No,
Waterbury?
These midday runs are specific to pre-K, and all we pay on that is the hourly rate for the driver. It's not an extra bus that we're leasing. We already have leased those buses.
But
So-
isn't there fuel cost or something in addition?
I think that's a piece of the, that's a piece of the
Driver.
agreement with the, the driver.
We pay the fuel cost.
Certain number of miles. These are big chunk.
Okay, so then midday cost, this would be the 2 o'clock pickup? Or what is this?
We don't take them home at 2 o'clock. The midday is the 12 o'clock. The children that are only there in the morning are leaving on a bus, on one of 3 buses at this time. And that is the hourly rate. So that is the $10,304 per bus for the year.
Okay, but what is okay. This run is 5 days a week. It is not another bus lease. The bus is already leased. We only pay for the driver on this run. I don't
Yes.
get that. $10,304
Right,
to pay for the driver?
yes.
Okay, and times 2.
Well, times
Times
3.
3 if you have 3 buses.
Well,
If we
yeah,
need
I'm
it.
just saying 4 now if needed.
Right.
So, okay,
And this
so-
again is what we do
okay.
now. It's just not 5 days a week, it's 4.
Okay. So then, the first bus A costs a total of morning and afternoon $30,912, right?
Yes.
And bus B, $30,912.
Yes. And bus C, if we need it, we only pay the midday run piece of that.
Of this cost, $20,608 offsets the Abbott Tech run for morning and afternoon. So you're saying the cost to the pre-K program for busing A is net $10,304? I'm not getting this.
Well, you know, maybe I might be able to figure it out, because it drove me crazy too when I looked at it. And do I understand that right now you have 4 buses in play, and after you do this, you're going to only have 3?
Maybe.
And so you may have 3 or 2, but you're going to, let's
Fewer.
assume you have 3. So if you ignore the morning runs, because they're exactly the same, nothing changes about the cost of the morning runs. If you look at midday, right now you've got $32,000, almost $33,000, because you've got 4 buses at $8,200 a throw. All right, you're going to 3 buses at 10 grand a throw, which is 30,000. So you're saving 2,000 a day on the midday run. Am I understanding that correctly?
A year.
A year. 30,000 a year on the midday run.
2,000.
2,000 a year on the midday run is what you're saving.
And if we only needed 2 buses, we would save over 12,000.
Right.
Yeah. So the bottom line is it's slightly less expensive, maybe a little bit more than slightly less if you're down to 2 buses versus 3.
Right. Yes.
And now, can you maybe explain why you have 3 buses instead of 4 again? Because that's what I wasn't quite sure of.
Bob insisted on having 3 buses because we don't have the addresses.
Well, I do have the addresses, but we would have to give them
Well,
to Pam, and we wanted to make sure
we
that
have
we
to
were
map
gonna
it.
Well, is there a
pursue
chance you're going to end up with the 4 you have now?
No.
Why not?
Because the way we talked about it last time, when we had spoken about, there was more interest in the expanded day option among the parents when we talked to them at the lottery registration. Of the group, only 10 families wanted a part day, and they wanted the different options. Some people wanted 5-day a week, some people wanted the 4-day a week.
You know, I understand all that, but I guess what's confusing to me is if you have 4 days a week now, and you have fewer children now than you're anticipating having when you expand this program, and you're going to 5 days a week, why do you end, and the 5-day a week versus 4 is the reason why each bus costs more. I understand that.
Right.
But the question is, why are you going to need fewer buses if you've got more kids?
Right now, we bus on both ends of 2 half-days. We bring them all in the morning, we take a group home midday, we bring another group in midday, we take them all home in the afternoon.
And at this point, the expanded day option would not be transported home.
Not be transported home, and that explains it. Okay, thank you. That was the elusive thing. You said that, I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, 3 kids per bus.
Got it. Got it now. Excellent.
I think we all like the idea of expanding education. I do as well. I don't know, though, that this is the right time for a lot of our residents, our citizens in this economy. When I'm looking at these figures, I'm seeing a proposed staffing price of $205,000 plus 30 or some odd dollars for the busing. And the problem to me is that that's shared among so few children. Expanding this program right now does bring us to about 24, I guess. That's $10,000 a child, not including facilities expenses and other labor that supports the program. If I was in the preschool market, that would be fantastic to have my school system provide me with that at no cost and busing. But that's a very rich price tag. A lot of people ask us why we have continually declining population, but we don't have declining expenses. And if our preschool population was naturally allowed to decline, it would seem logical that some of our expenses would decline over time. And people want to know why we keep having maybe a 0 or a very slight increase in budget, which is good in these times, but with our reduction in numbers.
This does not increase the budget, it just is more effective
I
use
know.
of what resources we have.
I understand that, but I think that there's 20 some odd families who will benefit from this. But there are thousands of families out here that are struggling economically right now who would like to see a reduction, not simply maintaining and not increasing our budget, but actually reducing our budget. So is this the right time to expand this preschool program to everyone in the region at a cost of about $10,000 per student from my rough estimates?
I don't see that. I don't understand that. Where do you come up with 10,000 per student? That's the thing I'm not getting. What they're telling you, I think the problem is the materials are a little confusing. But from what I understand is we're not proposing to hire one additional person to the school system. We're not proposing to add any buses. In fact, we're reducing buses. In fact, the cost is going down, not up. The difference is, and the thing that's confusing is, you're allocating more staff time to this preschool. You're not hiring anyone else. What you've got are surplus staff time. You've got staff time that's not being used. Is that my understanding? That we're just simply not using it?
No, we've got staff time that we can change as we decrease enrollment. Currently, one of our preschool teachers goes around to each of the buildings and works with our kindergarten students with needs. And so as that decreases, he can spend more time in our preschool. Same thing with our other preschool teacher. She spends some of her time with some middle school students who have specific needs as well.
But to Mrs. Lott's question, would this be time that would normally cause the people who you're allocating to this program to be laid off because they wouldn't be here, and hence we are actually spending more? That's what I'm trying to get that
By
answer.
relocating the program, we don't need a person to be .5 transition kindergarten special ed teacher. We don't need that. By relocating the program to an elementary school, the children understand what it is to be in school. So we don't need .5 of a special educator to be helping those children as their first experience in school, because their pre-K experience would have been in a school, not in a corner room off of a high school and middle school.
No, I understand what you're saying.
We're just being more effective with what we have, and we would not save money by not doing this. We would not save money. It would actually cost more simply for the busing.
So do I have this right, that it's $2,000 a year cheaper to expand to a 5-day universal pre-K for the district than it is to run the existing program?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to point out too that the REACH part is state mandated, so we have to provide this program regardless. So by better utilizing the staff and the buses, we actually get more or less for something we're state mandated to do anyway. So
Our kindergarten teachers can tell which students went to a pre-K program and which did not. And although our survey results say 80%, that was 80% of those taking the survey, which was open to the public. But we do know it's more like 50% of our incoming kindergartners have experienced pre-K. And we really want that opportunity for all of our children.
So to follow Greg's synopsis of this, we'd have to pay this money for the REACH program.
Yes.
We're allowing more children to have access to the same program, plus everybody's getting an add-on.
The same or better.
Same, well, I'm
Yes.
saying the same. They could go to just the morning, which is
Okay.
what they would normally have. We're saying they get that, plus they get the add-on, and every kid who's in the program gets an add-on, and it's costing us $2,000 less. So we can't save money by knocking the program out. It's just not a possibility. So we're going to have that money anyway. We're saving the district $2,000 a year by expanding this program.
Yes.
Valerie?
Well, on the transportation part, no matter where these identified children are that should be part of REACH, we have to provide transportation. So in some cases, that might not fall into schematic that you have. You would have to have a special bus to pick up that identified child.
And that's the case now too, yes.
So if we have the REACH children, what you propose as a bus runs might not actually be. We might indeed have to pick up child X in the far corners of Bridgewater.
Right.
We have to provide that transportation by state mandate.
And what Bob has arranged in the past, because we do have those situations, is that there are other special ed outplacements. Not all of our buses leaving the district are going to Abbott Tech or Oliver Wolcott. They're going to other facilities throughout the state, and on their way back through, they will pick up the pre-K students and vice versa.
Okay. Now, I want to get into the staffing because I don't understand it except for the bottom line. And the bottom, okay, first off, because we're having a mixed group, we have to have staffing of 1 employee per 10 children, correct? And that's what you have in your calculations of staffing?
Yes, we're a little better than that.
So how many two-year, 10-month-old children do you have, and 3-year-old children do you have?
Currently in our program, or?
No, you proposed.
I don't have the ages of the students in my head right now. I could get that information for you. But for the most part, the bulk of the students that came, I'm trying to think back to if there was a 2-9. I can't remember that there was.
There might have been one. I'm thinking of one.
I can get you what the ages of the students are and what they selected.
Okay, but obviously, as you well know, that ratio of staff to children follows the lowest age level. Obviously, we get away with a lesser ratio if you're talking just 4-year-olds, but you've opted to mix your classes. So you'll have to have more staff. Could you kind of walk me through this? Because I'm not hearing what other people are saying. Because what I'm seeing is that the status quo saves us money, and the status quo doesn't save us money when we have a declining population. How are you staffing?
Well, we currently have teacher A is a pre-K teacher in the mornings, and in the afternoons that staff member is assigned to specific middle school students. Those middle school students with our declining enrollment could be put on someone else's caseload who is a special educator at the middle school level.
And this is the kindergarten teacher that we have now on staff, but will not have a classroom next year.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Let me ask these people. Because we have a declining population, we have now and will have only one section of kindergarten in Washington Primary?
We will have one section next year, based on our enrollment.
And this year we have one section?
Yes.
Okay. So that particular person is not the present kindergarten teacher, not
No.
someone that...
These 2 people are
okay,
present pre-K teachers.
These are REACH.
These are our REACH teachers.
Okay, these are totally REACH. They're nothing to do with anything having to do with the kindergarten.
No.
Okay, because originally you said because there was extra space and one other kindergarten teacher not presently employed, we were going to use that person.
In the afternoon.
No. No, one of our preschool teachers spends some time in our kindergartens across the district, transitioning our students with special needs, helping them get situated in their buildings, help them working with their IEPs. But as we decrease, I have a special education teacher in that building that could begin to pick up that kindergarten student. And when the fact that them having a elementary experience in pre-K will be less of a need to transition to an elementary.
Okay, so basically then we're going to not need that 0.5 FTE.
In our current configuration, we would not.
Okay.
Yes.
So going forward, we would not need that 0.5 FTE.
Actually, let me restate that. If we maintain our current configuration, we still need someone to spend half their day doing transitional work with the kindergarten children. By relocating to an elementary school,
you won't need that.
We don't need the 0.5 person transitioning the kindergarten children.
Yeah, so you'll save a 0.5.
That will be then spent in preschool.
Okay. So you're planning on 4 teachers and 2 paras?
No, you just notice they're listed as teachers. One of them is a speech pathologist. We have 2 in the district. A portion of this speech pathologist she spends in our pre-K. So she's listed as a teacher because that's what she's hired as, but she's a speech pathologist. She's not an additional teacher. Okay, and then the other person listed as a teacher is our school psychologist that spends 0.11 with REACH, and she does consultation and collaboration around students and their needs, particularly whether they be behavioral needs or our testing needs.
Okay, so how many teachers are you going to have in this program?
2 teachers, a 0.3 speech pathologist, and 0.11 psychologist, as it currently is.
Okay, well, I'm seeing 3 with 1 FTE for each one.
Because the speech pathologist is district-wide. She goes to the
Okay,
other
so
buildings.
so this person is really not gonna be
No,
in
no,
the
no.
building, not traveling around.
She travels
This is an
from-
independent contractor, I believe.
No,
We
she's
own
a district
staff.
hire.
Okay.
But she goes, and it really depends year to year on how the speech pathologists break down the students and their needs and who they service. But right now, she currently attends 3 buildings.
Okay.
She services students in 3 buildings,
All right.
plus reach.
So our current expenditure is $143,749, is that correct?
For salary and benefits for certified staff.
Plus 34,585 for the paras?
Yes.
Okay, so that we know. And so the proposed is,
It's the allocation.
it's 34,000 stays the same for classified and 206,000 for certified. Yes, no?
Yes. That's the allocation. Those people are still full-time employees. It doesn't cost the district anything more, but you had asked for the breakdown on staffing
Right.
for the program.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems, see if I have this right. Teachers C and D and the paraprofessionals, there's nothing different there. It's
Right.
teachers A and B. And the difference is, if you take teacher A and you take the 25% they currently spend as a special ed teacher and put that on someone else's caseload, because you've got people with time that could pick that up, that's going to take $20,707 and transfer over into the REACH program.
Yes.
You've then got teacher B that's currently 50-50. You're going to take the 50 special ed, transfer that to someone else, and that's going to take $41,414 and reallocate it into the REACH program, but it's not new money.
No.
It's just reallocating it. If you add the 2707, the 41,414, they add up to be $62,121, which is the exact differential between the 205,870 allocated cost and the 143,749 of the present program. The money's all allocated for it. It's just the transfer of 0.75 FTE from 2 people from special ed into the REACH program to accommodate these additional students. And you're not hiring someone else to pick up that 0.75 FTE. That's just being transferred to people whose workload is not currently sufficient. I mean, they don't have enough work to be, they could take more work and still be within what we're paying them and still the same number of FTEs. So really all you're doing is just moving around the time, and you're being able to squeeze out the time in a way that's more efficient, and that's why it's not costing any more, even though if one looks at this piece of paper, they might think it was costing us $62,000 more a year. It's really not costing the district. It's just that more will be allocated to the pre-K program by rearranging and getting efficiencies from other employees, and that appears to be what the answer is. So, it gets back to my initial observation, which is the total cost of the universal pre-K is not more. In fact, it's $2,000 a year less for the district.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for saving money.
Except that we still have the issue that we have a declining population, and instead of looking at our staffing, we're maintaining and enhancing program. And that's the complication, because I do think that we're going to see people in our district say that if we're losing a population, I can't grab it, hold on.
While you're looking, Valerie, I think what we have to do with those people who say that is we have to understand what we're being told and then repeat it to those people. What we're being told is that the state mandates that we spend a certain amount of money on special education, regardless of our student or physical population in this region.
Right,
With that in mind,
which is our
with that in
REACH
mind, we
program.
have already spent the money. Even if we have 4 kids who are not special ed kids in this entire region, we still have to spend the same amount of money on the 8 kids for the REACH program for the special ed kids.
I agree.
So, because of that, we are already spending clearly several $100,000 in staffing and several tens of thousands of dollars in busing. What we're now doing by expanding the program is we are allocating the unreducible costs to a greater number of students. So, and therefore, because the state mandates that despite our shrinking population, we still have to keep spending this set amount of money. We are turning that into a benefit to the children of our region by offering them as universal preschool, pre-K as we can, because we can't reduce the cost.
Well, actually, up to that point, I would agree. But clearly, we're losing 5% population almost yearly.
Right.
And I would expect that our budget, as much as we can, should go down about 5% a year, which would probably mean, let me finish, which would probably mean some staffing and not just keeping the status quo. Now, of course, we want universal pre-K. Part of my problem is the fact that we should be reducing and not patting ourselves on the back because we're staying the same. That's dangerous.
Problem is we can't
and I'm
reduce
glad
it.
we're saving $2,000 on transportation. Let's hope it stays that way. But it's a new program. It's an expanded program. If we're going to do it, we should do it, and we should do it well. And if we find that the next budget year we can't have this new program out there, we're going to have to pull back, because the population expects the budget to go down. I expect the budget to go down, not stay the same. The other thing is still, I don't understand how your staffing costs will go up if you have more kids enrolled. Okay, because we know that ratio, it's state law. But also, how can you have it in favoring one part of our school system? Clearly, our mandates are to have an equal educational opportunity within reach of all towns. And that was why reach, literally and figuratively, was up here. And now it's in Washington primary. I represent the town of Washington, yay for us. But I really worry that we're going to have issues in the other two towns once they focus on the fact that we're favoring, yet again, the town of Washington by placing the only preschool in one town.
It was always in Washington.
It
It's
was
not
up,
new.
Reach is here. Reach is here.
This is
So if you
Washington.
want to do it here. That's all, as you have done.
All right, excuse me, Valerie, I have one question, and we have some more questions here. The mixed age groups, are they currently mixed at the moment?
No.
This is a new ball of wax, isn't it?
It's a good thing.
Is it good? Because in a way you have young threes, you have your two nines, and then you have your old fours. And those are entirely different critters. And we're prepared, obviously, for mentoring and for modeling. That's a good thing. But as far as the care and the interaction, you're prepared for the discrepancy in the needs of those two age groups when it is.
Of course.
I mean,
Yes.
here I am trying.
Anthony, what do you
trying-
think? Are we prepared? We're prepared.
It's not an unsurmountable obstacle, and
And it's changed, it's not just here, I mean, a lot of programs run mixed age groups, and so it's not, it may be new here, but how you do things, you're very planful, you're very thoughtful. And developmentally, we have kids who maybe are the same age, but there's a wide discrepancy.
already
between
within
skills, so-
within that single age, I understand. Okay, Greg?
I was going to say, I'm not troubled by I think I have difficulty saying that we need to make across-the-board cuts in everything we do because the population is going down. I mean, you can't take, unless you start lopping pieces off the buildings, you can't cut the air conditioning costs on the buildings. You can't cut the electrical costs on the buildings. I mean, there are certain things that are disproportionate. And the idea that we have an opportunity in our program to broaden the program, make it a better program, and to tie this better to the people that live in this region, and to give them more reason to be supportive of the region, because we provide a greater degree of service. And the fact that we can do it without increasing the budget seems to me to be a win-win, because frankly, the way to wrest control of the budget is not by taking the program and diminishing it. Because on that argument, we ought to stop offering math. You got to figure out how to count anyway, so what do we need to offer math for? By that argument, we should stop offering language. The state doesn't require it, why should we offer it? The point is, we have an opportunity to enrich the program with a net small savings in cost. We ought to do it because it ties people more to region. If this makes more people think about the Region 12 program as opposed to sending their kids somewhere else or as opposed to moving somewhere else. That's a good thing. So for all those reasons, I think I'm fully supportive of it, and I think we ought to go forward with it right now.
Well said.
First of all, I want to thank you both for addressing many of the questions that came up in the last time that you presented. I think you did a thorough job, and for your patience in walking us through what you probably are just intuitively living with and understanding. Maybe it takes some of us a little bit more time to kind of come to the same conclusion that you came to maybe a little while ago. So thank you for that. But I feel like that we're rehashing a lot of the same things. So I'd like to call the question.
All right.
Good.
Any question?
And go to a vote.
I need a question. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, we need to vote. All right, make the motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion that the board supports the changes to the REACH program, including mixed age groups, expanded day option, and the change of location.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Question?
Second was from Michelle.
And question, you
what-
can't call a vote before a motion is made.
All right.
I withdraw my.
No, actually, it wasn't. Do you have a
There was
second?
no
Out of
motion.
order. There was no motion on the floor.
Yeah, there was
That
no
was
motion on the floor.
question.
So now we can discuss.
And she.
Well, is there a motion?
There is now a motion.
Would you repeat the wording of it?
That the board supports the changes to the REACH program, including mixed age groups, expanded day option, and the change of location.
All right, is there any brief discussion?
Yes, please.
Repeat the same thing.
I just hope the board is aware of our responsibilities put forward by the state. And that is that we must, 10-186, provide school accommodations, including transportation, for all district students. That we, 10-220, as amended, et cetera, give all children in the district as nearly equal advantages as practical. Provide adequate instructional materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, and technology, and allocate resources equitably among schools. I don't have a problem with pre-K. I really do not. It's a wonderful thing. It really is. I've spent 20 years of my life supporting pre-K as a volunteer. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. And what I'm concerned about right now is we're not doing it right, and that we're opening ourselves up, I believe, to some real issues here, because we shouldn't be charging children for materials to go to school. It's a public school. We shouldn't have to have a various and sundry pickup times by parents, because then we're denying some children that opportunity if they can only be picked up by parents and not offered a bus, as we do to everyone universally in our school system. We run empty buses, but we have to by law. Here's the law. And the equitable ability is in question, because we're only offering this program in one part of our very large school system. So I'm concerned about that. I don't think we're doing the right thing by the greater population. Also, once again, it's about the timing of this. If our administrative staff had asked us first, before soliciting and having meetings, yes, we know there's a snow day, cancel your meeting. We canceled our meeting. This is a new program that should come to the board, and we shouldn't be shoehorned and backdoored into it because we have a lot of people signing up, or maybe not, I don't know. And in this document also, the only time it says pending Board of Education approval was to talk about the fee, not the program itself. So, whenever there's a change of program, it has to come to us first. It shouldn't be something that we do, you know, as kind of a de facto, and we should do it right per state statute.
Michael.
Alan, point of order. He said I've not been answered over here.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a quick factual question. I think we were told that there were 2 special education students anticipated in the next year. How many REACH students in total are required to run a program with, let's say, that ratio, for example? Is it 5 students, 9 students? Is there a state mandated number?
You would just want to make sure you had enough students that if your population grew over time, you could keep it 50/50 or better.
50/50 or better, okay, thank you.
I don't know if I need to, but I would like to still move the, call the question.
Do we need to call this?
Let's stop stuff.
So you have to take a vote on that, it's not debatable.
All right, let's take a vote on that. All in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Hands, count hands, hands up.
What is this for, calling the
For calling
question?
the question. Oh, it looks like, oh, I'm sorry. You got that? All against? Any abstentions? Okay, now, the motion. Do we read the motion again, please?
Yes, sir. I make a motion that the board support the changes to the REACH program, including mixed age groups, expanded day option, and the change of location.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against? Any abstentions? Motion passes 10-2, thank you. All right, I'm sorry. No, here, I'm sorry, 8-2. 9-2?
9-2.
I won't say a thing, it passes. Debbie can figure out the numbers.
9-2, I'm sorry.
Okay. We're not done. We, ordinarily, we have a public comment at the very end of our meeting. The reason we're having it before the very end is because the Google Lab is really as far as training and advising our board members. So, opportunity for the public to comment? Anyone? You're all exhausted? Okay. Google Lab, Karen.
We're going to be moving into the lab,
Right,
so we're going to be shutting all
can
this
we
down.
like, I don't want to say adjourn the meeting, but people who want to leave, who don't need